Today I'm going to be taking a look at the film Citizen Kane. It came out in 1941, and just about everything in this film that could be done was done by Orson Welles. He was the director, the producer, he wrote the film, and he also starred as the title character Charles Foster Kane. Citizen Kane was nominated for a total of 9 Academy Awards, and won only one of them for Best Original Screenplay. It is widely considered to be one of the best and most influential films of all time because of its use of deep focus cinematography. In the words of Roger Ebert, it is now once again as official as such things can be. Citizen Kane is the greatest film of all time. You may be wondering what deep focus cinematography is, and for that I go to Roger Ebert's A Viewer's Companion to Citizen Kane. In this article he describes deep focus cinematography as a strategy of lighting, composition, and lens choice that allows everything in the frame, from the front to the back, to be in focus at the same time. Now you may not think of that as something that is particularly great, but when you consider film technology at the time, this was a really big deal. The man responsible for the use of deep focus cinematography was the film's cinematographer Gregg Toland. Toland, who was born in Charleston, Illinois in 1904, started in film as a cameraman in the mid-20s and worked on tons of films for the next 2 decades. He was nominated for 5 Academy Awards in Best Cinematography throughout his career and won one of them for the film Wuthering Heights. Today he is considered to be one of the top 10 most influential cinematographers. So let's take a look at an example of deep focus in Citizen Kane. This scene begins with a young Charles Kane out playing in the snow. Notice as the camera begins to zoom out and into the house how everything stays in focus.
Charles.
Kane.
Pull your muffler around your neck, Charles.
Kane, I think we shall have to tell him now.
Yes. I'll sign those papers now, Mr. Thatcher.
You people seem to forget that I'm the boy's father.
It's going to be done exactly the way I've told Mr. Thatcher.
There ain't nothing wrong with Colorado. I don't see why we can't raise our own son just because we come into some money. If I want, I can go to court. A father has a right to. A boarder that beats his bill and leaves worthless stock behind. That property is just as much my property as anybody's, now that it's valuable. And if Fred Graves had any idea all this was going to happen, he'd have made out those certificates in both our names.
However, they were made out in Mrs. Kane's name.
He owed the money for the board to the both of us.
The bank's decision on all matters
I
concerning...
don't hold with signing my boy away to any banker's guardian.
I want you to
just
stop
because...
all this nonsense,
The bank's
Jim.
decision on all matters concerning his education, his places of residence, and similar subjects is to be
The
final.
idea of a bank being the guardian.
I want you to stop all this nonsense, Jim.
We will assume full management of the Colorado load, of which I repeat, Mrs. Kane, you are the sole owner.
Where do I sign, Mr. Thatcher?
Right here, Mrs. Kane.
As you can see, everything from Mrs. Kane in the foreground to Charles out playing in the snow is in perfect focus. Usually only the foreground would be in focus, while the rest of the picture is somewhat blurry. This use of deep focus was revolutionary for its time period. This is also a good time to discuss the use of form and content. The textbook defines content as the subject of an artwork, and form as the means by which the subject is expressed. In this case, the content is Mrs. Kane signing papers that would give custody of Charles to Mr. Thatcher in order for him to have a better life. As you saw, Mr. Kane was not particularly happy about this. Notice the form used in this scene, with having Mrs. Kane as the largest person in the scene, and Charles is the smallest way off in the distance, with Mr. Kane somewhere in between. This signifies that Mrs. Kane holds all the power in the decision that is being made. The power decreases as each character gets smaller, moving to the background, where we see Charles, who has no power at all. Let's take a look at another example of the use of form and content in Citizen Kane. The content of this scene is Charles declaring the principles that he and his newspaper are going to abide by.
Don't smile, Jedediah.
Watch for the form as this scene
Got it all written
unfolds.
out. Declaration of principles.
You don't want to make any promises, Mr. Kane, you don't want to keep.
These will be kept. I'll provide the people of this city with a daily paper that will tell all the news honestly. I will also provide
That's the second sentence you've started with I.
People are going to know who's responsible. And they're going to get the truth in the Inquirer, quickly and simply and entertainingly, and no special interests are going to be allowed to interfere with that truth. I'll also provide them with a fighting and tireless champion of their rights as citizens and as human beings. Signed,
As soon as Charles began to say what his principles were, he stepped out of the light and into the shadows. Darkness and shadows are generally seen as evil. foreshadowing that Charles is not going to stick to these principles as his life goes on. Turning back to deep focus for a moment, although Citizen Kane is seen as the film that revolutionized deep focus, it was not the first time that it was used by Gregg Toland. Toland was also the cinematographer on the 1940 film The Long Voyage Home. Watch how he uses deep focus in this scene from the film.
East by north, 3/4 north.
East by north, 3/4 north.
Notice how the characters in the foreground around the wheel of the ship, as well as the man standing outside that we can see through the window, are all in perfect focus. This is another perfect example of Gregg Toland's use of deep focus cinematography.